hunted since I was 14. Back then, it was all about deer season, cold mornings, and spending time with my dad. Now, it's just me. I still go every November, but after what happened 2 years ago, I never hunt alone anymore. It happened on a piece of private land in northern Pennsylvania. An older guy from town owned almost 80 acres of thick hardwood forest and let a handful of us hunt there every season. I'd hunted that property for years. I knew every trail, every creek, every fallen tree. That's why what happened made absolutely no sense. I parked my truck a little before 5 in the morning. The woods were covered in a fresh layer of snow. Not much, just enough that every footprint stood out perfectly. The hike to my tree stand took about 20 minutes. Everything felt normal. Too normal. No wind, no birds, nothing. Just silence. By sunrise, I was already settled into my stand, sipping coffee from my thermos. Around 7:30, I noticed something. About 60 yards away, there was another tree stand. I literally rubbed my eyes. I knew for a fact that stand wasn't there last weekend. It looked old, rusted, like it had been sitting there for years, but I would have noticed it. There was only one trail of footprints leading toward it, none coming back. I figured maybe another hunter had permission to use the land. No big deal. Until around 8 o'clock, someone stepped into view. A man, late 30s maybe, dirty gray hoodie, dark jeans, no blaze orange, no rifle. He just stood beside a tree, looking directly at me. He slowly raised one hand and waved. Not friendly, not threatening, just acknowledging me. I awkwardly waved back. For maybe 5 seconds, neither of us moved. Then he stepped behind the tree. I expected him to walk away. He never came back out. I waited almost 10 minutes. Nothing. Finally, I climbed down. When I reached the tree, my stomach dropped. The snow behind it was untouched. There were no footprints, no trail, nothing. The only tracks ended right where he'd been standing. I actually laughed to myself. I figured I'd somehow lost the trail. Maybe he'd doubled back. Maybe I was just tired. That's what I kept telling myself. I walked toward the strange tree stand. The seat had a thin layer of untouched snow. Nobody had climbed it. The footprints stopped at the ladder. That was it. Like whoever made them had simply vanished. I decided to head back toward my own stand. Halfway there, I noticed something tied to a branch. A strip of bright orange hunting vest, then another. About 20 feet farther, then another. Someone had tied them at different heights, like trail markers. Curiosity got the better of me. I followed them. The woods somehow felt darker, even though it was barely noon. The trail ended beside a dead squirrel hanging from a broken branch. Not eaten, not cleaned, just hung there. I stared at it for several seconds, then noticed another. This one was a rabbit, then a crow. Every single one hanging exactly the same way. My chest started tightening. This wasn't some hunter. Somebody wanted these to be found. And suddenly, I couldn't shake the feeling that somebody was watching me. I turned around, fast. Nothing. I decided I was done for the day. I started heading back toward my truck. About halfway there, I stopped. My backpack, the one I'd left 20 feet up in my tree stand, was sitting against a tree. Every zipper was open. Nothing was missing. Whoever did it just wanted me to know. They'd been close enough to touch every single thing I owned, without me ever hearing them. I shoved everything back inside as fast as I could. Then I started walking. I didn't want whoever was out there to know they had gotten to me. But I could feel it. That feeling you get when someone is standing behind you. The parking area finally came into view. Relief hit me, then disappeared. My driver's door was open. I knew I'd locked it. I never leave my truck unlocked in the woods. I slowly walked over. Nothing looked stolen. Then I noticed my registration papers. They were sitting neatly on the passenger seat. I'd left them inside the glove box. My hands were shaking so bad, I climbed inside, locked the doors, started the engine, then looked in the rearview mirror. There he was, standing just inside the tree line, maybe 40 yards away, the same gray hoodie. He raised one hand. For a second, I thought he was going to wave again. Instead, he pointed directly at me, then, slowly, dragged one finger across his throat. I didn't stop until I reached the highway. I called the property. He sounded confused. He told me nobody else had permission to hunt there. The next day, he contacted the game wardens. They searched the property. Almost a quarter-mile off the main trail, they found a shelter hidden beneath old tarps and fallen branches. Inside were backpacks, trail cameras, wallets, hunting licenses. Most belonged to hunters from surrounding counties. Some had reported their gear stolen years earlier. Others never even knew anything had been taken. The wardens never found the man. It was like he'd disappeared into the woods, just like those footprints. I still hunt, just not alone. And every single time I climb into a tree stand, I look around first. Not for deer, not for coyotes, for another tree stand that wasn't there before. Because if I ever see one again, I'm turning around and leaving without making a sound. Some people go into the woods thinking they're the hunters. Sometimes they're the ones being hunted.
I've always loved camping. Hunting, not so much. So when my cousin Jake invited me on a weekend hunting trip in the mountains, I said yes anyway. Honestly, I just needed a break from work. There were 3 of us: Jake, my buddy Chris, and me. Jake had hunted those mountains for years. We reached camp just before sunset. It sat beside an old logging road that hadn't been used in years. No trucks, no campfires, no people, just endless pine trees and silence. We pitched our tents, started a fire, and spent the evening laughing. Honestly, it was one of the best nights I'd had in months. Until we heard it. A scream, far away, high-pitched, like a woman yelling for help. Chris looked at Jake. Jake shrugged. Probably a fox. I'd heard foxes before. That didn't sound like one. Then, about 10 minutes later, the scream came again. Closer, way closer. It echoed through the trees. Chris yelled, "Hey, you okay out there?" Nothing answered, just dead silence. Jake quietly reached over and picked up his rifle. That's when I realized he didn't think it was a fox anymore either. We let the fire die down, stopped talking, and crawled into our tents. I barely slept. Morning finally came. I stepped outside, and something felt off. The folding chairs had been moved. The cooler had been dragged several feet. A grocery bag had been ripped open, but nothing was missing. Jake blamed a bear. Maybe. But bears don't turn a chair around, so it's facing the woods. Like someone had been sitting there, watching you sleep. Jake didn't argue. He told us we were moving. We packed up and hiked another mile deeper into the mountains. The new campsite felt different. The trees were thicker. The air was colder. Even in the afternoon, the sun barely reached the ground. Jake shot a decent-sized buck before sunset, cooked dinner, and for a little while, everything felt normal again. Then, the scream came back. This time, it sounded like it was circling us, not getting closer, not getting farther away, just moving. Then, crack! A branch snapped behind our tents. Jake swung his flashlight toward the sound. Nothing, just endless trees. We killed the fire early. If somebody was out there, we didn't want to make it easy for them. Inside my tent, sleep wasn't happening. Then I heard footsteps. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They circled our tents, stopping every few seconds, like whoever it was listening. Then they stopped, right outside my tent. I held my breath. I could hear breathing, not an animal, a person, heavy, slow, calm, waiting. Suddenly, Chris screamed. At that exact moment, something sprinted through our campsite. Branches snapped, gear flew everywhere. Jake fired one warning shot into the air. Everything went completely silent. We stayed awake until sunrise. The second daylight hit the trees. We packed everything. No breakfast, no talking. We just wanted out. As Jake loaded the truck, he frowned. My folding chair's gone. We searched everywhere. Nothing. It had completely disappeared. About 20 minutes into the drive home, Chris quietly said, "Guys." We looked into the truck bed. Standing upright was the missing chair, facing the rear window. None of us had put it there. Nobody had opened the tailgate. No one said another word for the rest of the drive. I still go camping, just not in places where nobody else goes. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing in the woods isn't a bear. It isn't a mountain lion. It's the person who's been watching your camp since before you even arrived. And maybe they never really leave. They just wait for the next campers.